where we are, I should go back to this, is we're just going to do a kind of brief introduction and kind of very high-level overview of the system and the way it works as a front end. So tomorrow we're going to get very much deeply into some of the demonstration examples. I'm just going to do a very high-level kind of what it does. With this. If you're on the front end, as I'm sure many of you have tried before, they'll see two main things that you can do. The two things that I should mention that our focus so far has just been on making sure that we can have the schema and data model in order to accommodate substance information, the registration process that is robust enough to be able to handle diverse substances. Our focus has not yet been on querying and searchability, but that's something that we're slowly evolving as time goes on. The ability to define substances is extremely important. The ability to register and adequately represent them was our primary concern. So one thing that you'll be able to see immediately, of course, there's a search box. Here you'll be able to just search for some substance that you might be interested in, because there's some autocomplete there. See when a search comes back what that list of substances that match that criteria are. Right now, it's not a very interesting list. This is just one structure, but in there you'll be able to see if you can. I'm sorry, my resolution's low. You'll be able to see laid out in a grid all these substances, various as thumbnails in a grid. You also change to a list view, and so you can see these things side by side. If you're interested in seeing the structure, for instance, if this is a chemical, this has to be a chemical. You'll be a thumbnail view of it, and if you can enlarge the view just right from here and see some more information about what that thing is. You also click on the record by clicking on the ID at the top, or double-clicking the record, and do of the several different versions of green, depending on substance class it is. This has to be a chemical. The way chemicals are presented, it's on a chemical structure. So it's some defined information below about the molecular formula and various housekeeping things, as well as the stereo information. If you go to moieties, each chemical is composed of moieties, able to see what the chemical configuration of these moieties are. For instance, it's very common, and we'll get into this more tomorrow. It's very common, and is mentioned in the standard, that the molecular formulas, molecular structure is for the most part the defining elements of chemicals, but out that there are often additional things such as stereochemistry that are not adequately defined or definable just in the mole file alone, and include extra information to say whether they're achiral, absolute, racemic, and so on. You'll see in this case there are two moieties in alien. One of them is absolute, configuration, and one of them is achiral. I see all the deep information about this, which includes all various synonyms and names. And synonyms associated with this structure, with this substance. So in them are various brand names, codes, common names, and so on. If you expand, you can see some deeper details on this, which includes things like what references are, where this information came from, some access control information, and so on. You can edit some of the reference information if you're logged in as a user, and then you'd be able to save that. But it will probably just delete any change. So similarly, you can see all the various sources and references that have been mentioned that mention this substance, where the information came from. Much of this information came from USB Dictionary with a collaboration with them. Some of it came from FDA, and most of it came from the FDA. There is a notes field, a code field, which will be things that are very what do you call it? Other systems. You can, for many, you can go into properties and so on. Also associated with these are various references to relationships to the substances. So this includes things like active moiety relationships and so on. I don't know if I'm going to
explain relationships a bit more, because we talked about twice in FR and but I don't really understand.
So the concept of relationship is not. So there are two main part of the ISO standard and of the general model. Things that are defining structure and amino acid sequence, things that are the immutable properties and truth behind the substance. And then reference information, things like what the name is, what they call the here, and so on. One of the relationships. And relationships is very simple. Relationship is just some, you have two substances, there's some between them. It's a triple. So yeah, this substance has a moiety, which is this substance. So in the case Ambien, which was a tartrate salt, that's a substance. The acid, I suppose, for the acid. Yeah, right? Of course, tartric acid. So the free base is also a substance. So the substances and the relationship between them is an active moiety. This is a moiety of this. So other ones like impurities or metabolites, this thing metabolizes to this thing. Or they're the salt solvate ones, say. This thing is salt or solvate of this thing. Right? That's really all it is. It's all informational. None of it is used to define a substance, but is necessary in order to completely understand a substance.
For ethanol, there are these relationships between substance and active moiety. For our safety evaluation, we really do most of the safety analysis based on the active moiety. So if there was a different salt form, we would group all the records together based on the active moiety. And this system works. You could do it either way, but we always sure we have an active moiety so we can do safety analysis. Because the tartrate or the hydrochloride isn't causing the problem. It's the other thing. That's why the active moiety is kind of an important relationship for us.
So I'm just going to go to another one. So in this case, I just searched for ibuprofen, and you'll see all of these things that come up that are related to ibuprofen. Our search right now just searches for any time that the ibuprofen is referenced at all, and it shows the various different substances that are related to it. So here you'll see, whenever you look at one of these result pages, substances, if you'd like, for whatever reason, you can click and you can view more information. You can also export the mole file if you don't think then you'll find it useful. You can reorganize things. The nice things that you can do is you can just see on the side some summary statistics about what it is you're looking at. So it's a very common thing to do when you're dealing with the substance definition is to about the stereochemical configurations that are inside of things. It's one of the most commonly misunderstood and mischaracterized things. What you're looking to do is look for all those things that are related to ibuprofen that are racemic, or you might be looking for all those that have absolute stereoconfigurations. Like absolute, for instance, it will just sort down my results, so I see only the ones that are absolute. So we'll hear various forms that are either related to ibuprofen are there isomers and so on. So you can do this with many other facets. You only want those things that have one moiety, two moieties, three moieties. You can supply it by less editing. If this were a search that returned proteins and so on, you'd be able to see those and filter down with each substance class that you want. Similarly, if I wanted, for instance, I can say only those ones that have certain moieties. Right, these are represented by chemical structure. So if I only want, the chemical formula, if I only did those things, for instance, that had sodium inside of them, I'd be able to click this and say, here are all the substances that from my search that have sodium as one of the components. If I look to something, for instance, after I get something like this, one useful thing that we probably use in the near future, we'll be using back and forth, is this button will let you export the data. So the data, you'll be able to see the data as its native JSON file format. And you just either copy and paste and email somebody this so they can import it into their system, or you click the Save File button, able to save this somewhere and import it at a later date. So let me say this again. When you have at the full list here, when you get some query results that you're interested in, you can click the third icon at the top, which is the export icon. I can be able to see details of that as its native JSON format. You can save it to email to somebody else using their system or to import for later